Welcome to Greenshoe Radio. I'm your host, Mark Bunting. Our guest today is Keyvan Salehi, President and CEO of Nighthawk Gold Corp, trading under the ticker symbol NHK on the TSX and under the ticker MIMZF on the OTCQX. Good to see you, Keyvan. How are you?
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's dive right in here. And I think it's probably important to establish right off the top for investors that you say this is the new Nighthawk. This is not your granddad's Nighthawk, so to speak. So you've got new management, including yourself, a new strategy. And after you did a deep dive with your team, you decided on an approach whereby you're doing speedier drilling and looking for shallow targets. So what went into that thinking and that strategy?
Sure. So if you look at the history of the company, for those that may be new to the Nighthawk story, the company has been around for quite a few years, just over a decade or so. And during that time, during that tenure, about 185,000 meters of drilling have been done on the entire property. When I stepped into the role as the new CEO in January of this year, and then we also added Richard Roy, who's our new Vice President of Exploration. Very quickly, we identified that what we really needed to do here was to speed up the drilling. If you look at the entire land position and the size of the property and all the targets that are available to us, but more importantly, the fact that our camp and infrastructure has been set up such that we can actually do a lot more drilling, it was kind of a no-brainer. So that's the reason behind kind of increasing and accelerating our exploration programs over the next 2 years. We've proposed upwards of 200,000 meters of drilling between 2021 and 2022, which more than doubles the work that the company has done in the last 10 years.
Those last 10 years, the approach has been described as steady and slow drilling. So what was the importance from an investor standpoint? What was the importance from a return on investment standpoint to change course, as you've been alluding to, and to take a fresh approach?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. I think the big thing for us and the major shift in strategy and focus has been to look at the overall size of the property and all the assets and all the targets that are available to us. Whereas in the past, majority of the work that was done by the company was in a very small footprint around the core asset, which is the Kolomak Center, and that's a 2.5-3 kilometer radius. And in relation to the overall size of the property, which is 60 kilometers long, anywhere from 20-30 kilometers wide, just under 1,000 square kilometers of highly prospective ground. We just thought that a more general approach to the entire property was something that we should look at. There's a number of targets that show great potential for higher grade and near surface mineralization and potential discoveries outside of the Kolomak Center, which make it really attractive for us as a company going forward. So if to couple that with accelerated exploration programs, a lot more drilling in a very smaller time frame, and focusing on near surface shallow targets would allow us to not only look at a higher or larger footprint in terms of the entire property, but also all these targets show great potential for higher grade near surface mineralization. Nothing suggests that this mineralization doesn't come to surface. And that's really the concept that we put forward in terms of our plans going forward. We think that's where the best value for our shareholders and investors are. And we see a lot of great opportunity for resource expansion along some of the areas where we already have resources, but also further discoveries on some of the targets that we've identified. A lot of these targets, a lot of this work was done in the past by the previous management team, but really wasn't followed up on. And we've kind of taken a more general approach to the entire property as opposed to focusing in on a very small footprint.
You mentioned your vice president of exploration, Richard Waugh, and he said that the belt that you have in the Northwest Territories has all the key ingredients of a world-class gold mining camp. You've called this year for Nighthawk transformational. So you've been alluding to it there a little bit, but give us more flavor, more of a sense of the actual size of the property and the aggressive drilling program that you have underway right now.
Sure. So one of the things that attracted both myself and also Richard to the company was starting with the size of the property. We've talked about this, and if for those again that are new to the story, our vision statement is to develop Canada's next gold camp. And although we are a small company and sometimes we get criticized for making such a bold statement, if you look at the size of the property alone, again, 60 kilometers long, anywhere from 20, 30 kilometers wide. To put that in perspective, it's basically 3 times the size of Timmins Gold Camp. And for those who follow the gold story really well, will know that that camp has generated 50 plus million ounces of gold over the last 5-6 decades. So we definitely have the size in terms of essentially or potentially getting to the next gold camp in Canada. In addition to that, geologically, we're in the right setting. Richard has talked about this before. We have, it's an arcane gold camp, greenstone belt, different styles of mineralization. We're seeing really large and wide alterations of the hosted rock. So all the right ingredients from a geological point of view are there for us. In terms of more details in what we're looking at drilling in this year and next year, so I talked about 200,000 meters of drilling for the next 3 years. The way we've broken that up is 75,000 meters in 2021, with an additional 125,000 meters next year. For this year, what we did was we took a staged approach. Stage 1 is 45,000 meters of drilling, and stage 2 is 30,000 meters. We don't have the details for stage 2 because where we drill in phase 2 of this year's program will heavily rely on what the results of phase 1. But in phase 1, our focus is 1, resource expansion. About 55% of the drilling that we want to do is going to be around areas like Kolomak Center, where we already have a lot of resources. Also, Cast Zone is a property that we did an option on earlier this year, and it's got a historical non-compliant resource, and we see a lot of great opportunity within the Cast Zone for further resource expansion. And then I also talk about all these other targets that are within a 15-20 kilometer radius of the core property, or core asset, I should say, Kolomak. These are targets that were either drilled or were sampled and really never followed up on. And, the likes of Andy Lake, Lori Lake, JPK, Albatross, these are some really interesting targets that show great potential for either discoveries or additional resources, but at higher grades than what we've seen at Kolomak. That's really the important thing is. That's one of the important things to consider when we look at Nighthawk 2.0, if you will. It's not just about expanding resources within the core asset Kolomak, but looking outside of that shell, and also looking at higher grade material as well, because there's a lot of potential for higher grade stuff near surface.
Now, Keyvan, let's get into the weeds a little bit here. You've got about 1 million ounces of what's called Whittle-constrained pittable resources. So explain that for those who may not get it, including perhaps myself, and what's the importance of that for the company?
Sure. So if I took a step back and looked at the history and the performance of the share price over the last year or so, a major event that triggered a big sell-off in the stock was the publication of a mineral resource that was done in July of last year. That was the first time the company published a mineral resource estimate that was constrained. So because of all the drilling that had been done, and it was going to be about 70% of our resource is in indicated category, so higher category. So for that reason, the resource has to be constrained. And the way that was done is really it's not what the market expected, given that 1, total ounces went down, and also a large part of that resource was an underground resource at a lower grade. And I believe the market perceived the Nighthawk to be a good to higher grade open pit type of story. And I actually think that is true. That is really the case. What we're seeing today in the global resource base, our global resource base is just over 3 million ounces, at around 2 grams per ton. So if you were to look at that on the face of it, it looks like Nighthawk is a lower grade underground story, given that about 2/3 of that resource is an underground resource. But that's really a function of all the drilling and where it has been done, which is along the main trend at Kolomak and at depth. But if you if you take a more general approach to the entire property and kind of zoom out and look at all the targets and all the potential mineralization and the gold that could be there on the property, this can actually be a good to higher grade open pit story. And that's been one of the things that we as a new team have tried to work on aggressively, trying to change the narrative and perception about the fact that Nighthawk can in fact be a good to high grade open pit story. So that 1,000,000 ounces of open pit is very important for us, Mark. It's basically the basis of what we're trying to strive towards. We talked about the 2-year aggressive exploration campaign, getting 200,000 meters of core out of the ground. On the other side of that, obviously, we want to get to some sort of an economic assessment. We have a mining concept in mind. That's something that we as a team kind of came together. We thought about at depth, and after evaluating all the assets and the targets that sit on the property. And what we're trying to get to is anywhere from 3 to 4 million ounces of near surface open pit resources at about 2 grams per ton, which would lead into and be the basis of a fairly robust and scalable mine plan, looking at anywhere from 275,000 ounces to 325,000 ounces of annual production per year over an 8 to 10 year period. And that would be if we can get to 3 to 4 million ounces of 2 gram per ton material, then we would have basically, if you just run the back of the envelope numbers on the economics of project of that size and scale, given today's gold price environment, you'd see that the economics are very attractive. So that's the kind of concept that we're trying to strive towards.
All right. Now, a Sprott in a recent report, and back to pittable ounces, it figures you can get to about 1.5 million ounces short-term pittable. And it says the Cass zone, which is part of Kimcast zones, it's a no-brainer to drill there. So what's the importance of Kimcast in terms of the overall strategy?
I think I touched on this before, but Kimcast is, we did an option. That's one of the first things we did as a team together as well earlier in February, I believe. We saw that as a great opportunity. It's something that the previous management had also looked at back in 2014, but for whatever reason, I believe it was because the market cap was really low and they didn't have the financial capabilities to pull the trigger. So we saw that as a very easy and a quick opportunity for us to do the option on. We see great potential for Kimcast. At Cass, the drilling goes down to about 120 meters at depth at most. If you take Cass and combine it with some of the other existing targets on our property, Albatross being the main one, there's about a strike length of anywhere from 7 to 8 kilometers, which is nearly double what we've seen at Kolomak. So in terms of size, a long strike is a lot more significant than Kolomak. But also when you look at the higher grades, the historical non-compliant resource at Cass is about 2.5 gram per ton material. And that's only been drilled down to 120 meters at depth. And when you start thinking about those kind of grades in this gold price environment, these pits can essentially go down to anywhere from 400 to 500 meters at depth. So not only do we have the option of expanding resources along strike significantly up to 7 to 8 kilometers, but we also have a lot of opportunity to expand resources at depth as well. So for that reason, we see Kimcast as one of our key targets. We currently have 2 drills set up on Cass. It's one of our top targets in our phase 1 exploration programs. We kind of got a late start to that one, but we should start seeing results from that over the next, I would say 4 to 6 weeks.
Now, the Nighthawk has about 60 million in cash. How long is that going to last? You're fully funded for this year? And when may you need to raise some more money?
We have just closed on a bought deal financing for 27 million, which brings our total cash position to just under $33 million. So with the cash on hand we have now, and on the back of the latest financing, we have enough funds to see us through the rest of the year and complete our 2021 exploration programs, which is about 75,000 meters of drilling. In addition, we are now in a position to be able to open up our camp early next year in order to prepare for our 2022 exploration programs.
Now, back to the Sprott report, they made an interesting comparison between Nighthawk and Marathon Gold, in that Marathon changed its strategy a while ago before it reached critical mass and started getting the attention of the market. So do you agree with that analogy?
Well, first of all, let me just tell you that personally, I'm a big fan of what the team at Marathon Gold have done with the Valentine Lake Gold Project. Kudos to them and congratulations for, I believe they just published the feasibility study in April of this year on that project. So good for them. They've done a great job in the last 2.5, 3 years. I think, where we are today is where perhaps Marathon Gold was 2.5, 3 years ago when they brought the new team and they basically changed their strategy and focus. And I think they've done a great job. And I think, I would agree that where we are today at Nighthawk is where Marathon Gold was 2.5 years ago. So that's a great point of comparison. For us, if you kind of get to the details of it, I think we can be on the same trajectory as Marathon has been over the next 2 years with the plans that we've proposed. But actually, I would add that we can go above and beyond that. One, given the size of our property, we have higher grades than Marathon has just published in their latest feasibility study. But more importantly, we are looking at a much larger and scaled mine plan and operations, if you will, as part of the PA that we're planning on the other side of this 2-year heavy exploration campaign.
Now, for investors, can you look out a few quarters, or if not a year or two, and give us some of the milestones? Again, I think you may have touched on some of these, but some of the milestones investors can expect, especially the preliminary economic assessment, which I believe is due sometime in 21, correct?
Well, in the near term, the results of all the drilling that we're doing now and will be for the rest of the year is something that investors can look forward to. As I said before, this year is our largest drill campaign in the history of the company. So there will be lots of news flow and lots of assay results that will follow. So it'll be a very busy and hopefully exciting year for us. And that's something that investors can look forward to. We will also be updating our mineral resources once a year going forward. That will usually happen early in the calendar year. So anywhere from late January to mid-February is when we aim to publish our updated mineral resources. So that's something else that the market can also look forward to as well. We'd like to incorporate all the drilling that we do this year into the new updated resources, but that will depend on how fast the labs can get our assays back. So we'll see, but nevertheless, we will update our mineral resources regardless of how much of the drilling we can incorporate into the new model. And something else that I think we've already touched on, but given that the company has been around for quite a few years, I think the next natural step or key milestone for our company, considering that we'd like to advance the project forward, obviously, is delivering a PA to the market. We would like to do that on the other side of our 2-year, 200,000-meter drill program. So the earliest that can happen is mid to Q3 of 2023. Once we've completed the 2-year, 200,000-meter drill program by the end of 2022, and we've had the results back, we've updated our resources, and then we can go out and do the engineering and all the work that entails in order to deliver a PA. So that's something that will take a little bit longer, obviously, but I'd consider that to be our next major milestone that the market can look forward to.
Let's take a step back, Keyvan, and look at all the monetary stimulus out there around the world, all the fiscal stimulus, and the price of gold. Do you think gold is where it should be? Is it getting competition from cryptocurrency? Should it be higher than it is? Well, what's your take on gold and where it might be headed?
Yeah. So again, I think the macro picture for gold and precious metals in general is pretty good, and I think we're in the first few innings of even a bigger rally. For me, this compares a lot to what we saw in the last major crisis of 08-09 global financial crisis. And during that time, from trough to peak, we saw gold go from, I think, $650 to just over $1,900 an ounce, which was nearly triple. So I think that's where we are right now. All the stimulus, all the central bank spending. One metric that I watch very closely is that U.S. debt to GDP ratio. And if you look at that, I think based on the latest numbers that I've seen is about 1.3. That metric has nearly doubled in the last 10 years. So as long as that trend continues, I think the environment for gold and other precious metals is fairly positive. So I think there's even a bigger rally on the other side of this. But and then another tailwind for gold and precious metals in general is this latest hot topic of discussion, which is inflation. And if inflation is here to stay, which I think if it's not here, it's going to be. If you look at some of the consumer price index data, I believe inflation's here. And I'm not sure if I agree with the Fed that it's transitory. I think, oftentimes when you get price increases, that price increase is pretty much, at least at the consumer level, it's there to stay for a long time. So that's another tailwind for price of gold. I think cryptocurrencies, will, they will probably take some of the, capital flows that would essentially go into gold and other type of commodities, but I don't think it's going to be that dramatic. I think I think we're still seeing growth, right, globally, right? So I think all asset classes can perform, especially if you consider the fact that inflation's there and the appetite for cash is not going to be there.
Lastly, Keyvan, with Nighthawk stock, Northfield Capital owns about 20%. They've been a long-time shareholder. Kinross owns about 10%. I presume, like most CEOs, you think your stock is undervalued compared to peers. So just wrap it up with a bow here for us. What's it going to take to prove out NWT and Colomac, and also convince investors that this is not the old Nighthawk, this is the new real deal Nighthawk?
Sure. I think results, the concept that we've proposed to a lot of our investors and shareholders, our major shareholders are fully supportive of the new plan and strategy in place. So the concept is well received. Now we just as a team have to basically do proof of concept, and that's going to rely heavily on results, which we're hoping to get some results out in very short order. We started drilling starting late February, early March. Unfortunately, because of COVID, there's been a lot of delays in getting results and assays back. But as some of this, like I said before, we're doing 75. We're hoping to do 75,000 meters of drilling in 2021. Which is nearly double the amount that the company would have done in any given year prior to COVID-19 anyways. So there's going to be a lot of news flow. And I think results to prove that, with the concept that we put forward is the first thing that I'm looking forward to. I think to your point, my view is perhaps a little biased, but yeah, this is a great entry point for Nighthawk. Just given where we are, the size of the property, and all the targets that are available to us for further resource expansion, but also additional discoveries on the entire land position.
All right, we'll be watching Nighthawk 2.0. Keyvan, thanks a lot for your time today. We'll talk again.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
All right, great stuff. You've been listening to Greenshoe Radio. Our guest has been Keyvan Salehi, President and CEO of Nighthawk Gold Corp, trading under the ticker symbol NHK on the TSX and under the ticker MIMZF on the OTCQX. I'm Mark Bunting. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.